ATB Music Podcast.
Hello, Orpington. Hither Green calling.
Hello. It works.
These are the results from the Hither Green jury.
Fantastic. Gosh.
The wonders of one technology. It'll probably cut out halfway through, but you know,
Well,
we can but give it a try.
this is, hang on, let me just, can you hear me okay? Because you look much clearer than I do. Oh, cool. Right. I'm just going to shut the door, go to the fridge, grab a beer, and I'll be right back. But you carry on.
Okay. I'll carry on without you. I'll tell people what it's about.
Go on.
Hello, podcast world. We're back. Yes, you thought you could get rid of us, but no, you can't. See, last year, the excuse for not podcasting was we couldn't get together. This year, well, apparently it's the excuse to get together.
Excellent.
Who'd have thunk it? Hey, who'd have thunk it?
Who'd have thunk it? So the excuse is to get together. What a crazy world. Everything has been turned upside down. But we're still here.
But we still have music. Yes, listener, we have music. And 6 albums again. Wow, here we go. We're going mad. So we have new albums from the Boomtown Rats, Mandy Moore, Porridge Radio, Stitched Up Heart, Brandy Clark, and Nova Twins. So, without further ado, I suppose, let's get in there with the 7th studio album from the Boomtown Rats. However, they're first in a mere 36 years, since 1984's In the Long Grass.
Wow.
Yeah. Is it a welcome return from the Boomtown Rats or not, Peter?
Yes, it very much is. I really enjoyed this album, and for me, I think what I really enjoyed much about it was that it's a very modern record, and I realise that's probably the most unmodern and uncool thing I've said so far this year, but it could be recorded by a much younger band. It has a different mix of genres. From what you say, it starts in a very sort of traditional, where I expect the Boomtown Rats left off. But actually, by the end of the record, there's a lot more of a modern sort of production, and it definitely becomes more of a pop record towards the end as well. With the exception, I think, of the last track, which is a fine, just sort of knockaway track called the Boomtown Rats, which is amazing. You know, it takes all that time just to get round to that, joining that sort of plateau of bands that have recorded a track which references the name. There aren't that many. Look it up. It's a very, I found it a very enjoyable record, very quick record, as are a couple on this podcast, which is just as well, really, because even though we're all sat at home, it feels like I have no time for anything. so
who's zooming who, Pete? Who's zooming who?
Yeah, exactly. Between the Zooms, there isn't much time for listening to music, but hey, it's a whole new world. So I really enjoyed the record. From the off, I really liked particular tracks. I liked KISS, Here's a Postcard. Earlier on, Trash Glam Baby, as I said, nice sort of rude welcome back. But followed very quickly by things like Sweet Thing and Monster Monkeys, which were, sort of set the tone for the album. As I say, it does switch to what felt like more of a pop production about halfway through. But yeah, no, I really enjoyed this record. How about yourself?
Less so.
Ah, well, that is a shame.
Well, it makes a change for us to disagree on something. Actually, we haven't disagreed with
I
everyone.
can't see you.
Yeah, you can't see me making the faces when you're praising it. don't get it wrong. It's okay. It's okay. But I mean, for me, I strangely found it kind of, obviously it's very derivative of lots of things. Although bizarrely not particularly of the Boomtown Rats, which is quite interesting. And for me, strangely enough, it did sound like a bunch of old men trying to make a now sounding record. Although you are right in the fact that it does succeed in sounding like a now record rather than something old. So I kind of found it hard to find any charm in the record particularly. What it did do was it made me go back to listen to the first couple of Boomtown Rats albums again. And obviously, which is never a good idea, because obviously after doing that, playing this makes you kind of want to cry, frankly. However, I do think in the middle, you didn't actually mention this track, but I think in the middle of the album, there is a track that is really, really good and reminded me of both how great the band were in the past and how good a lyricist Geldof is capable of being. And that was Passing Through, which is the song which seems to be really about the death of his daughter. I found that quite a nice, quieter moment on the album and quite a moving thing, because I think it's got that line where it's we take these rented souls and render them immune to loss or pain. We just pretend it's all the same, which I thought was a nice kind of thing. So it's okay, but seriously, no one in 5 years, 10 years, 20 years time is going to be sticking this album on, I don't think.
No. Yeah, okay. I think on that we can agree. But I thought it was all right.
But, I don't begrudge them coming back.
Well, clearly not.
A mere 36 years as well. It's like,
Yeah, what have they been doing the whole time? Well, yeah.
Well, yeah. Exactly. Less said about that, the better, probably.
Yeah. Moving on.
So we move on. Yeah, move on to Mandy Moore. And actually, someone else who's taken a while to also her 7th studio album.
Yeah.
However, it's only her first in 11 years, not 36 years. So got some way to go really to catch up with the Rats on that front. Funny enough, her last album, Amanda Lee, came out at the same time she married Ryan Adams. It's interesting that it's taken to now for another album to come out. This album, like her previous album, was mainly co-written with a guy called Mike Viola and also her current husband, who is the frontman of Doors, Taylor Goldsmith. Viola's an interesting person because he also was the person who sang the song "The Thing That You Do" from the Tom Hanks film, which came back into the news this week because the guy who wrote the song, Phantom Wayne bassist Adam Schlesinger, unfortunately died of coronavirus this week. That's a sad moment. But anyway, on this album, I mean, Moore's last couple of albums have musically been pegged her firmly in that kind of 70s singer-songwriter folk pop music influenced kind of vein, which appeals to me, generally speaking. And I think it's fair to say this album pretty much sits firmly in that kind of area once again. And I have to say, for me, the first half of this record was pretty much faultless. I mean, it starts off really, really strong with I'd Rather Lose and then Save a Little for Yourself. And then the third song, 15, I think is one of the standout tracks of the album. Really, really lovely song. Has a very much kind of Fleetwood Mac kind of feel to it, which I think several of the tracks on the album have that kind of 70s Fleetwood Mac kind of vibe going on, particularly like Easy Target and stuff like that. Second half is probably not quite as good as the first half, but I quite like some of the songs, particularly Forgiveness, which is definitely seems to be reflecting on her marriage and relationship with the aforementioned Mr. Adams. I particularly like the line in that forgiveness is not a favour and sorry is not just a word, we won't be friendly later in spite of what you heard, which I quite like. And I also liked towards the end of the album as well, Stories Reminding Me of Myself, which I thought, reminding myself of me. Sorry. So overall, I thought it was, quite laid back, 70s West Coast tinge, folky pop goodness, really. Enjoyed it.
Yeah. No, likewise. For me, I listened to this album immediately after another one, which we haven't mentioned yet. So it wasn't much of a change of pace for me, those two albums back to back. But what I found about this, that there is something, very much more laid back about this particular record versus the other one. So yes, you still have the emotion running through. I particularly like "Try My Best Los Angeles." That did make me smile.
That screams single, that song, doesn't it, really?
It does, doesn't it? Yeah, it really does. So, I quite liked the sort of reassured poppiness of that and a couple of the other tracks. But yeah, it has this album has quite a warmth to it. Not necessarily, well, yeah, some spots lyrically, but it has quite a warmth to it in terms of the sort of, again, the production is what stands out for me, and that sort of, it's a very easy listening, and I mean that in the most positive way, kind of record. No, I really, again, this is probably one of my favourites of this particular set, if I'm honest. So yeah, quite like this one.
Okay, moving on, and actually, what's good about this particular selection of records, actually, we've got quite an interesting mixture of genres, actually, in this particular podcast. So next up is a young Brighton band called Porridge Radio, and their second album called Every Bad. So indie.
Yeah.
Indie. UK indie.
What I like about this particular podcast, with the exception of the Boomtown Rats, is it's all female-led as well.
It is indeed, yes. It wasn't intentional when I was pulling it together, but it was only when I finished doing it, it was like, oh no, it's all women, isn't it?
and again, I think what I really liked about this album, it really was a slice of classic indie. It sort of takes you back to the sort of early 90s. Not quite shoegaze, but it's quite nice. Again, solid in the best sense, indie record. What I really liked about this, it kind of, for me, it reminded me, we on the last podcast, we did Soccer Mummy. This isn't Soccer Mummy. Soccer Mummy was very different. This is a sort of a bit more of a classic laid back sort of indie. But the two actually very similar in terms of era or genre, certainly era. And I really liked, again, it sort of moved through a different sort of feel of indie. So it began very sort of straight down the line, Born Confused into Sweet. But actually, by the time we got to, final third of the album, the odd pop song, obviously. But again, it's sort of Lilac and Circling, and then Circling has that little bit at the end that sort of goes, there's a bridge between Circling and the final track, which is called Something, because that's exactly what it is. I found, again, it sort of has that sort of pop feel. It kind of draws you in. It was, again, a very easy record to listen to. I've had this one on probably the most of the current selection. I really enjoyed this particular record as well. What do you think?
Yeah, I agree. I thought it was very, very, very much a kind of old-fashioned indie vibe to it. And actually, parts of it made me think back to even further than years. Made me think back to the first kind of Joy Division album and early Fall stuff. But there's also, PJ Harvey, Nick Cave, all that kind of influence coming through as well.
Yeah.
Although I think the album is, as you've hinted, much more than some of its influences. And it's quite a heavy and dark record in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
With lots of repeated phrases lyrically and musically. And it's one of those things I was thinking, this is the kind of thing that could either leave you feeling really, really annoyed, or certainly has a kind of hypnotic pull. And it was definitely the latter for me. I found that singer-songwriter, guitarist Dana Margolin, seems to be wringing literally every last drop of emotion out of herself singing this collection of songs. And the first time I listened to it, I actually felt quite exhausted at the end. I felt so involved in the journey. And he says they mentioned things like sweet and pop song, which is not very much of a pop song, it has to be said. No. But I did like the kind of line in that: "Take me back to bed, shoot me in the head." You know. Yes. And even on Born Confused, there's that. I really like the way at the end it shares that bit where it says thanks for leaving me, and then after that you get "thank you for making me happy" repeated by the band over and over again until it kind of fades out, which I thought was quite fun. So yeah, I found it's actually a really enjoyable. Not always really enjoyable. The first time I was like I said, I genuinely was kind of emotionally drained after listening to it. But it's a really nice to hear a proper indie record, really.
No, I agree, and that's what I mean by easy listening, enjoyable listening. Yeah, it's quite dark, as you say, but enjoyable.
Yeah. Yes. Speaking of the darkness, the next album is called Darkness, and it's by some American people.
I like it.
Yes, we moved to America, and the second album from a rock band called Stitched Up Heart, which starts off all big rock drums and bass. And then it goes a bit Evanescence all of us straight away, and particularly you get some bloke joining in on the first track. And I have to confess, in that particular moment, I was quite literally sighing out loud and within, thinking, "Oh God, this is going to be forgettable and a bit like all the other kind of cliched rock out there." And to be honest, the next track, This Skin, didn't really make me feel like anything was going to change either. But then the third track kicked in, Problems, and I suddenly found myself kind of like nodding along and tapping my foot. And I think there's the middle part of this album where it suddenly kind of gets it right for what it's trying to do. So there's track Problems and then Warrior, Straight Jacket and Dirty Secrets in a row, which I think are all pretty good, kind of pop rock goodness, really. And I was quite happily kind of bopping along and going, yeah, this is all right. It then goes a bit kind of hit and miss again as it goes towards the end, although I think the last two tracks, Crooked Halo and My Demon, not too bad. They're not a band that are going to set anyone's world alight, I wouldn't have thought particularly, but I thought it was a pretty decent example of modern mainstream pop rock metal, really. It's enjoyable.
I agree. For you, it was, did you say Problems?
Yeah.
And for me, it was Warrior. So around about the same point in the album. It begins very heavy rock. And I completely agree with what you said there, because it really does settle down around the fourth or fifth track with Warrior. You have that run of tracks through the middle of the album where it really does find its feet as an album. And then again, towards the end, it's a theme on this podcast, or maybe my listening, there's a definite shift in tone. We get some much quieter tracks, quieter songs as well, before again it just picks up at the end with Crooked Halo and My Demon. I found that it was a much better record the further it went on. I have to admit, at the beginning, although there is one other we haven't mentioned yet, at the beginning, I found it very, oh gosh, okay, this is gonna strap in, this is gonna be loud, but actually it wasn't at all. I enjoyed it. It's probably not one I return to, but it's fairly enjoyable.
Indeed. We now move on to the third album from Brandy Clark, who has been a previous favourite on this podcast. We've reviewed both previous albums, and indeed we have seen Miss Clark live before as well. So, third album was meant to come out towards the end of last year and got delayed for various reasons. Has eventually seen the light of day now. So what do we think about Your Life is a Record?
I like it. I know. I had this on. Again, I've had this on a few times, and around the house as well. This is. Yeah. I mean, again. We like our country. This is a solid follow-up return from Brandy Clark. It was 12 Reasons, wasn't it? The last one.
That's the first one. The second one was.
There was another in the middle, wasn't there? I was getting confused.
Yeah, something in a small town. Something in a small town.
Oh yes, yeah. And we've reviewed all.
If Alison was here, she would tell me.
Yeah,
tell us exactly what it was.
No, you're absolutely right. I did enjoy that record as well. Clearly, I can remember. No, this is good. This is good. I mean, it's again stories of, love, loss, cheating,
the usual,
getting drunk, poverty, but also, being a singer.
Yes,
and I love obviously the duet with Randy Newman as well. I have to say those are words I never thought I'd say, having suffered enough of the Toy Story soundtracks over the years.
Yes, bigger boat.
Exactly. But it actually worked, I quite like it. So
it was a surprise when I heard that.
Yeah. So what's my favourite? Again, it's sort of an earlier part of the album. Great. Who broke my heart? Who broke whose heart? I particularly enjoyed. That was good. I think that's my highlight.
Yeah, I quite like that song as well. I agree. I think whilst this album probably didn't grab me immediately as much as probably the first two albums did, I think it's definitely a grower, and I think there's also a continuing growing maturity in the kind of lyrics. Obviously, as we know from previous stages, she does write a good, funny lyric. I particularly like the lyrics in "Long Walk." So take a long walk off a really short pier. Take a cinder block with you as a souvenir. I think it's just a brilliant couplet.
Yeah.
So stuff like that. Also, I really like Pawn Shop. That classic Brandy Clark kind of storytelling thing about one person who's selling a wedding ring and the person selling a guitar. Both things they thought they'd never ever part with, and then end up in a pawn shop getting rid of them. And also, Can We Be Strangers? I like the kind of sentiment of that whole kind of thing of we've all been in that kind of relationship where things have broken down and you actually kind of just wish you'd never even met the person. And I think there's a lyric in that which is, you don't miss some place you've never been, some face that you ain't ever met. No, you don't have to remember what you ain't ever had to forget, which I think, again, is one of those
great.
Just great lyrics. It's 3 albums she's done in a row that are good. So hats off to Brandy, frankly.
Yeah, she's good live too.
Yes, and hopefully we'll get to see her live again at some point.
Well, hopefully we'll get to see anything live.
Well, this is true, yeah.
Including each other.
I was going to say, including each other, yeah, exactly, yeah. Okay, so we end, as you kind of alluded to earlier on, with some more loudness.
Yes.
And a vocalist, guitarist, and bassist from South London, mate, called Nova Twins. And this is a band actually I've been aware of for a couple of years, and bizarrely I've almost suggested we go and see them a couple of times.
Yeah.
And then it hasn't kind of timing hadn't worked out, and I hadn't come back together and various other things. Because I heard one track of theirs about 2 years ago, and I thought, that's quite interesting. And anyway, this is how to start this. I found this album a breath of fresh air because literally the opening bars of Vortex made me A, smile, and B, turn up the volume.
Yeah.
Because literally they say in the song, you're in the vortex now, flip the switch to the distorted sound. And frankly, I don't think true words have been spoken in the start of an album for a long time. What follows is kind of 40 minutes of something that, like, I just think you just have to play loud. It's not an album that you can, just play quiet. You need the volume. And I think it's one of the most entertaining debut albums that I've heard in a while. It rocks, kicks proper British arse rather than ass, and has a genuine energy that I've found lacking and missing from many an album of indie and rock that we've reviewed on this podcast over the last few years. As you know, my heart belongs to loud guitars anyway, so it's good that this delivers. And I think with the hats off to both the girls and their producer Jim Abbas, who did the first Arctic Monkeys album, has also worked with Sabian and Adele and various other things. And I think he's managed to capture the kind of raw live energy of the band. I don't really have a favourite track particularly. I just, this is the album I've probably listened to the most in the podcast when I've been working in the week. When I've maybe it says a lot about how my working week has gone. I've just got to go, you know what?
Loud and angry.
Alexa, play. I can't do that.
Yeah.
She will try and do it. Oh, look, it works.
All right.
I didn't even finish the sentence. It could have went straight to it.
Hey.
Okay, Alexa, stop. That'd be copyright infringement. We can't do that. We can't pay the monies. Yes, I really enjoyed this record. Some of the songs aren't brilliant or anything, but I thought overall the kind of just the pure energy and vibe of it made this a really, really enjoyable record.
I agree. It zipped by this one. That sort of pace and energy and angry guitars, the momentum behind it, it just went. And again, as I said at the start of this particular podcast, anything that could be done within 30, 40 minutes was fantastic. For me, perhaps I haven't enjoyed this one as much as yourself, but that is not to take away anything that you've said around the sort of the power behind an album such as this, because we've not had this power behind any of the indie records that we've reviewed for some time. So that is to be, welcome and celebrated. I will give it. This is one of those that I will give another go. And it just, as you say, just whipped by, and really enjoyed it. But maybe not as much as you. But I did like it.
Okay, then. So the usual bit. Obviously, everyone should go out and listen, buy all these albums, or maybe not. Certainly listen to them.
Don't go out.
Yeah, exactly. What am I saying?
What are you saying?
I'm an idiot.
Don't listen to him. Don't leave the house.
Ever. Favorite album?
I think it's Porridge Radio for me.
Okay. Yeah. For me, it's probably a toss-up between Nova Twins and Mandy Moore, I think. Probably. Yeah. But actually, a pretty decent podcast, really.
Yeah. I mean, I know you didn't like the Boomtown Rats, but I like the Boomtown Rats album too. So
yeah,
something for both of us.
Indeed. Okay, so this is good. This seems to have worked. The thing is still showing its recordings. That's
yeah.
Good
just check that on my end.
Although obviously, I still have to get this from here into a format that can actually go into the podcast. But the good thing about this is it actually does record both of our bits as separate files. So basically, I can just turn you down altogether in the actual
and that's
mix.
it. And then you've got rid of me.
Yeah.
I was wondering how it would end. You were there when I started. I didn't. I'm going to wonder.
To be fair, we're all wondering how it's going to end, Pete.
Yeah, true. Oh.
Anyway, let's stop this. I will give you a call through other means once I finish stopping this recording.
Do that. Well, as for everyone else, stay safe.
And since this worked, we'll probably see you again. You know,
Yeah,
it's easy. This.
Yeah, easy. Don't have to come to Hither Green anymore.
Yeah. Until next time, farewell.